the victory parade of Spotlight Band. Tonight playing from Akron, Ohio. And here's tonight's Spotlight roll call. Ozzie Nelson. Here. Harriet Hilliard.
Here.
The Ozzie Nelson Band. Here. The men and women of the B.F. Goodrich Company. Here. And tonight's first Spotlight tune, you'll never know, right about here.
Thank you very much, and hello, everyone. The marching orders for the victory parade said, Ozzie Nelson, you do a hayfoot, strawfoot to Akron, Ohio. So Harriet and I stepped over here and right into the spotlight. First off, we'd like to try a little something special on Why Don't You Fall in Love with Me? Let's go. As long as you're not in love with anyone else, why don't you fall in love with me? You're driving me crazy, baby, trying to guess. Will you tell me no, or will you tell me yes?
Say, is that song too high for you, or is your voice changing?
It's bound to be.
You don't know the words either.
As long as you're not in love
Hiya.
with anyone else,
Hiya.
why don't you fall in love with me?
Hiya.
Hiya. Why don't you fall in love with me?
Say, what's the name of this song?
Why don't you fall in love with me?
That's what I thought.
Let's you and I get married tonight. I'll wear my new suit.
Well, I was going to the movies, but you are kind of cute, it says here.
You've got to go overboard for someone someday. Believe it or not, it's bound to be. As long as you're not dancing with anyone else, why don't you have this dance with me? We'll talk it over. Why don't you have this dance with me?
Say, do you always dance like this?
No, sometimes I move my feet. Say, would you like to go out on Friday? I've got tickets for the fight.
Oh, I'm getting married Friday. How about Saturday night?
You know, I can tell at a glance that I'm using the wrong approach. I'm not being taken seriously.
Oh, you're being taken all right, only you
As
don't
long
know
as you're not in love with anyone else, why don't you fall in love with me? I've got a C card. Why don't you fall in love with me?
And when the spotlight's on refreshment, it's Coca-Cola. However much you enjoy it, it may depend on how thirsty you happen to be. or maybe on how much you want to be refreshed at the time. Always, though, you may be sure the quality of Coca-Cola stays the same. It works the same. It tastes the same. And there's never anything to refresh you like a Coke. The place, the B.F. Goodrich Company in Akron, Ohio. The Spotlight Band, Ozzie Nelson. The same Ozzie Nelson who appears on the Raleigh Cigarette Show. The tunes, I've heard that song before, and you'd be so nice to come home to. We have with us here tonight another name on the Spotlight roll call. It is George Lake, war correspondent of International News Service, who has just returned to the United States after 31 months at the fighting fronts across the Atlantic. He went through the terrible London Blitz and spent a year and a half with the famous British Eighth Army in North Africa. He was wounded 3 times and was officially appointed honorary captain in an Indian regiment with which he served. He was cited 3 times for valor. Lake has been in the thick of hand-to-hand action, has flown in bombers and night fighters, has sailed in convoys through minefields and U-boats, has lived in the desert for months on end under conditions of almost unbelievable hardship and suffering. Most of what he has seen he cannot tell until the war is over. But what he can tell is fascinating and hair-raising enough. George Lake.
I want to start off a talk in an unusual manner. As a rule, a speaker ends his talk by thanking those of his audience who managed to stay awake. But I want to begin by thanking some of you for the fact that I'm physically able to be here tonight. If it had not been for some of you men and women out there and other American workers like you, I and some of my very closest friends might be at the bottom of the Mediterranean Ocean tonight. I'm able to talk to you this evening because of you people who make the self-sealing gas tanks, those marvelous big metal barrels which carry the juice to send our bombers and our allies' bombers over to paste those enemies who sneer at the achievements of the democracies. I was in a bombing raid a few months ago in which we sank several German and Italian warships and merchantmen anchored in Navarino Bay on the coast of Greece. I was flying in a B-24 of the United States Army's 9th Air Force. The plane was named Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, and she was only one of 9 which took part in the attack. We laid our explosive eggs all over the harbor, and I had the thrilling satisfaction of seeing a couple of our targets burst into flames thousands of feet below us. But before our formation could get away, 5 German Messerschmitts roared into view and dived down on our tails. Their deadly multiple machine guns were sputtering and flinging tracers and incendiaries on all sides. We shot down 4 out of the 5, which is not bad shooting, by the way. But some of their bullets did hit our aircraft, and that's where you folks came into the picture. Half a dozen German bullets plowed right through the big gas tank in the bomb bay of our plane. I saw a couple of drops of our precious and highly inflammable 100 octane seep out and dribble down the side of the tank. Late, I said to myself, get ready right now to begin paying for all your sins. And late, you better make it fast, because you haven't got much time. But thanks to you folks, I didn't need to rush it. The tank was one of those big self-sealing babies you folks make out here. And after a couple of drops had leaked out of the bullet holes, the gadget sealed itself perfectly, and we got home okay. So I'm thanking you for my life and for the lives of the crew of our plane. Things like self-sealing gas tanks and rubber tires and surgical gloves and rubber treads on fighting tanks don't often get into headlines. You never hear a communique say that such and such a place was captured thanks to the fact that our tank treads stood up for several thousands of miles longer than was specified. But I know of just such an instance when the British 8th Army smashed across the frontier into Libya last year. We ripped through Hellfire Pass and captured the Italian fort at Capuzzo with American-built General Grant and General Sherman tanks. Many of them already had traveled 3,000 and 4,000 miles during previous battles on rubber treads intended only for about 1,500 miles of wear. Stories of details like these don't make the headlines. But let me tell you that the soldier at the front knows all about it. It's these things that matter to the guy out there with the rifle. When you get away out in front and some Bosch or I-tie or Jap is pinging away at you with a machine gun, you think hard about these details. Things take on a different perspective when you get up front. When you're in the rear areas, you smoke a cigarette halfway down and toss the butt away. You can get all the candy and cookies and soft drinks you want back to the lines. But at the fighting front, a half-inch cigarette butt sometimes is priceless. I saw 2 soldiers under heavy enemy fire in a slip trench in Tunisia. One had just come up from the rear lines and had hauled along a couple of bottles of Coca-Cola. He gave his pal 1 bottle of Coke, then sold him the second bottle for $15. I once drove all night across the almost impassable sand to get a single box of cookies stamped with a famous American trademark. And to a soldier thousands of miles away from home, the sight of these American trademarks, with which we're all so familiar, comes like a message from home. The trademarks on your products assure the boys out there that the folks back home are working all out to send them everything possible.
Rubber industry tonight, Akron, Ohio, where ice-cold Coca-Cola's on the job, too, bringing welcome refreshment to war workers, just as it does for the fighting forces and the folks at home. Have a Coke is the bright and cheerful, friendly invitation to the pause that everybody knows will be refreshing. For there's ice-cold Coca-Cola, just what it takes to make it so.
Now it's Harriet's turn once again, and she tells a familiar story, and here it is.
The kids all called him Johnny Zero. In school, they always used to say, Johnny got a zero, Johnny got a zero, Johnny got a zero today. The kids all laughed at Johnny Zero, and they would tease him when they'd play. Johnny got a zero, shame on Johnny. proudly say.
Johnny got a zero, he got another hero.
Johnny got a zero today. Johnny Zero is a hero today.
Johnny got a zero, he got another zero.
Then Johnny came marching home again today, hooray. Johnny came marching home again, hooray, hooray. A lot of important people were there. A brass band and a wonderful speech by the mayor. But if we could have read Johnny's thoughts that day, I'm inclined to believe we'd have heard him say, in my arms, ain't I ever gonna get a girl in my arms, in my arms, ain't I ever gonna get a bundle of charms. Comes the dawn, I'll be gone, and I thank you for the many letters you'll write. Though I'll do my best to keep my chin up, there's no fun dancing with a pin-up. Give me a girl in my arms tonight. Give me a girl in my arms
The spotlight points with pride to the men and women of the B.F. Goodrich Company in the world's rubber center of Akron, Ohio, and the thousands of workers in B.F. Goodrich plants throughout the United States and Canada. Since 1870, this vast industrial army has been producing rubber for peacetime uses. Today, as every day, their slogan is, "This is my war," because the products they make fight on every front. On the land with B.F. Goodrich rubber tank tracks and combat tires. On the sea with life rafts and life preservers. In the air with giant bomber tires, wing de-icers, and self-sealing fuel tanks. On missions of mercy with surgeon's gloves and blood plasma equipment. Truly, men and women of B.F. Goodrich, this is your war. And we deliver this salute from the nation. As to every one of you, the spotlight points with pride. Tomorrow night, the Spotlight calls the roll at Dow Field in Bangor, Maine, with Al Donahue running up the Spotlight mileage meter. Right here in Akron, it's Ozzie Nelson, the Sons of the South, and taking a chance on love.
Love, love, love makes you sigh, makes you cry. But honey, here I go again. I hear the trumpets blow again. All aglow again, taking a chance on love. Here I slide again, about to take that ride again. Starry-eyed again, taking a chance on love. I thought the cards were frame up, I never would try. But now I'm taking the game up, and the ace of hearts is high. Things are mending now, I see a rainbow blending now. We'll have a happy ending now, taking a chance on love. Oh, I prove again, I can make things move again. In the groove again, taking a chance on love. I never dreamed in my slumbers, and bets were taboo. But now I'm playing the numbers on a little dream for two. Waiting in again, I'm leading with my chin again. Starting out to win again, taking a chance on love. On the ball again, riding for a ball again.
As Ozzie Nelson signs his musical signature in the Coca-Cola guest register, it's been night number 265 for the Victory Parade of Spotlight Bands, and we've marched 353,325 Spotlight miles. And remember, whoever you are, whatever you do, wherever you may be, when you think of refreshment, think of Coca-Cola. For ice-cold Coca-Cola makes any pause the pause that refreshes. Saying that tomorrow night will be at Dowfield in Bangor, Maine with spotlight music by Al Donahue and saying, see you then for the Coca-Cola Company. Good night.